request that you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. Can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Trustee Rhodey?
Here.
Trustee Bell? Here. Trustee Krasovich? Trustee Roberts?
Here.
Trustee Grabowski?
Here.
Trustee Hill?
Here.
President Knutson?
Second item tonight are two public hearings. First one is a public, I should say one public. Ordinance number 2023-02, ordinance to amend section 40.471 of the Village Code of Village of Pewaukee regarding the regulation of transient commercial lodging uses in residential districts. I hereby open up the public hearing. Is there anybody here that would like to make a comment at this time? Anyone?
About that. Just about this issue.
Just about this issue. Okay, well, I'll close the public hearing. Item 3 is approval of the previous village board meeting dated March 21st, 2023. I hope everyone's had a chance to look them over. Are there any questions, comments, corrections as the way they are presented this evening? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve as presented.
Motion to approve the village board meetings from March 21st, 2023 as presented.
Second, President.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are hereby adopted. Item 4 is citizen comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to share their opinions with board members on any topic they choose. However, due to Wisconsin open meeting laws, the board is not able to answer questions or respond to your comments. All comments should be directed to the board. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Speakers are asked to please use the podium and state their name and address for the record. Is there anybody here that would like to make a comment on anything at all?
Hi, Steve Rucci, 161 West Wisconsin Avenue. It's Lake and Pine Code, the business. I just want to touch base. I was reading up and looking at some of the other meetings regarding liquor licenses and whatnot. And my understanding as of right now is that there is a first come, first serve. So there's no waiting list. So if you've had a business in place or you're going to open a business, there's no way to say, hey, I was here first. So when the liquor license comes available, I'm next on the list. I'd like you to look at that and maybe change that to add a list so existing businesses or people can have first crack at it. They've spent the time here. So it just doesn't seem fair as of right now. So that's all I have, but just want to say thank you for all your service to us and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to make a comment at this time?
Hi, I'm Sarah from Beach Bum Bakery. I'm here about the parking out front. I'm hoping during the summer months of May to September that I would be able to rent those spots for the bakery parking only. With all the restaurants taking away parking spots to dine in, we are extremely limited on parking in the summer. Beach Bum is the only grab-and-go restaurant on the Strip, so we rely heavily on not just our customers, but also DoorDash drivers to be able to find parking right away so they can run in and out. As it is right now, the current 15-minute spots are used mainly by the Chocolate Factory customers to pick up online orders, but they have a door to the rear parking lot and are also choosing to rent the parking in front of their location for additional seating. I understand that the restaurants pay a fee to rent the parking spots to dine, so I would like to rent the parking spots for my customers to actually park in. As far as insurance, there is already a certificate of insurance on file naming the village as additional insured due to all the events we did with our mobile bakery truck. So in the end, I'm just asking for the same consideration you have shown the other businesses, and I'm willing to pay for it as well.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to make a comment at this time on anything? No? Okay, then we're going to move on. The next one is ordinances. A, possible action on ordinance 2023-02, ordinance to amend section 4471 of the Village Code of Pewaukee regarding regulation of transit, commercial, lodging uses in residential districts. Scott, would you like to start us out?
Sure. The ordinance you have before you is a product of Plan Commission discussion over several months. It was referred to the Plan Commission by the Village Board for review after staff became aware that the current code on file is non-compliant with state statutes. So the comment, again, the draft you have before you would be compliant with state statutes, highlights, and these were the primary points of discussion, I believe, and Craig and Jeff, please correct me if I misspeak. It was related to, under the analysis section, minimum night of stays required. The commission's recommendation is that the ordinance have a minimum 3-night stay requirement. You can go up to 6 nights. The commission's recommendation is for 3. For rentals, the commission is proposing that the board consider allowing 365 days a year. Statutes would allow for the village to have a maximum of 181 days of rentals. And then there is a license requirement that the commission is recommending be included, and that's outlined in the draft ordinance before you this evening.
Any questions or comments? Yes.
I want to provide a little more overview for the board. This was an item that was on the Plan Commission agenda for 3 months. We couldn't get resolution on it, partly because we could never get 7 people at the same meeting at the same time, so we didn't have an odd number to vote on it. That was part of the problem. But also, we simply could not reach agreement. One of the meetings where we had 6 people, we tried literally every possible configuration of different options. We could not get a 4 to anything vote on it. So there was a very divided commission on this. The proposed draft language you have in front of you, the final vote was 4 to 2. We had 1 person missing. Now that 1 person, I know her position on it, it would have been 4 to 3. It still would have passed, it still would have been here, but again, just demonstrates the fact that this is not a slam dunk issue. The part of the reason to try and move this forward is currently, until we have an ordinance in place, then the state statute is what prevails. And the state statute basically has no limitations at all. And so part of this is a little bit of holding our nose while we voted because something's better than nothing. Not that that makes for a great ordinance, it's just a reality. The 3 issues, well, the 2 biggest issues that come into play is the minimum stay. You could have from 0 to 6 nights, and whether we limit it to 181 days or we allow the full year. Those of us who, and I've been opposed to this from the very start. I was looking for the most restrictive measure, and I'll get into that for a reason, the reasons why, but acquiesced on the number of days operating simply out of the reality that if somebody only can operate for 181 days, guess when they're going to do it? They're going to do it in the summer, when you're most likely going to have the biggest issues. The number of days was kind of the sticking point, because it really got to a matter of what we want to make sure doesn't happen is that we end up with, houses full of bachelor parties and bachelorette parties and creating issues for the neighbors who live there. And that's really was one of the most contested points of it. The adding of the license, that was a provision that the state allows us to do. We did do that with a ton of conditions associated with it. And that is the one quite honestly, the one mitigating factor with all of this in that if somebody owns a home, let's say it's along the lake on Park Avenue, and they quite frankly are a bad player, you know, they don't control who they're renting to, or they have constant problems and there's constant complaints, their license could be not renewed. And so at least there is some element of control. Concern though is that, you know, if somebody lives next door to that and there's constant problems, they have to deal with it for a year. So the potential is there. The people that are currently own these and currently run them, as I understand it, there have been no issues. So that's not really an issue of, you know, whether the people that are doing it now are good at their job or doing a good job. That's really not the issue. It's a question of what about the next one, or potentially down the road, because what's going on in my subdivision where outside corporations are coming up buying properties and renting them. And again, that's kind of arm's length control of those things. And so we did add that in there, so at least that helps, and there'll be a little bit of money potentially coming into the village for part of that. But what it really comes down to, and I think it's important for everyone to kind of put this into its correct perspective, the issue here isn't about the people running them today or whether they're doing a good job or not, or whether the people that are renting are nice and like it or anything like that. It has nothing to do with that. It really has to come down to land use, which is really what the Plan Commission has to always look at is it appropriate land use? We routinely are looking at, you know, is this compatible? I mean, it's part of the language we use in the Plan Commission is this use compatible with the surrounding area? In my opinion, my view, and I've stated it publicly in several different meetings already, is it is not consistent with a residential neighborhood. The village has already made a position on this years ago, long before I was ever on the commission. It's probably a decade or more ago, where we had an ordinance on the books banning these kinds of uses within residential neighborhoods. However, the states decided that they know better than us on how to run our village and any municipality. And so obviously that ordinance is no longer at play. Even within zoning ordinances, we don't allow businesses to operate within residential areas because of adverse impact. And that's the other issue that we deal with all the time is adverse impact. You know, is something going to be a problem in terms of light or noise or anything else? And for that reason, that's the concern is how is this going to affect potentially the neighbors who live there, who are raising families there and so forth. And it just is not consistent with that use. But again, we don't have that option because the state is imposing the statute as it is. What we really have to do is look at this as to how can we structure this in a way that reduces that potential impact on the people that live there year-round, who own their homes. And that's why I was actually in favor of a very restrictive thing, not only to mitigate the impact, but also, quite honestly, to discourage it. And like I said, the Plan Commission was certainly not getting any kind of consensus on this. And so really what's in front of you is, like I said, where we got to, and it really comes down to the village board deciding, are we, you know, more concerned about the permanent residents or the transient ones? And so if I understand it, Mark, that if the board decides they want to make any substantial change to any of these components, that it gets bounced back. Am I correct?
That's true. The question becomes what's substantial, so.
Right, and I'll let you decide that.
We'll know it when we say.
So anyway, I've spoken way too long, beyond my normal 3 minutes.
You get more than
I get 3 minutes, I know. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of give that perspective to everyone in terms of that this has not been an easy task to deal with at the Plan Commission level.
Jim?
Well, I thank Trustee Roberts for the very seemingly discouraging one-sided representation from the Plan Commission summaries, because even though...
I said it was my opinion.
Correct. Stated as fact, but definitely opinion. Obviously, some consensus was reached because it's in front of us, so even after 3 months, it has moved on. But beyond that, you know, the facts are the facts that we have. Well, one, that you're right, 2018, Governor Walker passed this down to all municipalities. This has been in effect technically since 2018 that we have not been in compliance. So yes, we should get something on the books. But since short-term rentals have become a thing, we have had them operating within the village. We've had as high as 6, most recently 5 of them. And I got the notes from Commissioner Grabowski because he already did the research, so why reinvent the wheel here? But he actually reached out to the police department to pull the records to get actual facts on it, and there have been 0 police reports on any of the short-term rentals in all the years that they have been operating within the village limits. So that is factual. Beyond that, we won't get into the reviews, the positive reviews they've left, the renters have left, or the great things they've said about our village. That's all anecdotal. What it does factually have the potential to give us is another revenue stream, in the fact that the city, which does have a tourism board, that does have hotels and such, they pull an 8% occupancy tax, which is money directly back into the city, which then gets distributed for things like Positively Pewaukee. Parks and Rec have some say in that as well. And when I look at the village not having any income from visitors or from potential renters currently, we just passed on that money that's already been coming in. Airbnb collects that already, or VRBO collects that straight. That's not paid at the end of the year by the owner or anything like that. And who knows where that money went for the past handful of years that these have already been operating, because we don't have the tax on the books, so they're not giving it to us. I know we just had to approve money for funding the fireworks, which is, in my mind, a tourism event. Who's to say that this money that we're pulling in now can't go to alleviate that in years going forward? So $15,000 is what the city netted just on the tour, or on the tax alone last year. So, I get it. There's a lot of not in my backyard. There's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of anecdotal. This is going to bring crime. This is going to bring, from some of the emails we received, child molesters, drug dealers, things like that. But when you think about it, they're asking for the most restrictive, of which it's going to happen. Short-term rentals are going to happen. So it's just how long we can have them next to these people that are really worried about it, these residents. So is there some rule that I'm missing that sexual predators can only rent for less than 6 days? Because if it's a short-term rental, they can still rent it regardless of the stay. So now what you're saying is, no, if there's a problem person next door, we don't want them there for a short time. We want them there for the full 6 days. We want to make sure that they're there for at least 6 days next to us where they're a problem. So it's kind of counterintuitive where you're saying it's going to bring problems, and we understand that short-term rentals are going to be allowed, so let's try to keep them next door to me as long as they possibly can be there, is the way I read it. So why wouldn't you say, okay, short is better, because you know what? If they're a problem, they're gone. They're going to be gone in a day or two. Beyond that, I do agree with the permitting aspect of it. I do agree with, having some element of ownership within the community of it. I'll leave it up for everyone else's discussion, but what you can't ignore is the fact that these have already been operating. They're going to continue to operate. And some of the arguments that have been presented as the detracting facts are not valid in my mind, because, like I said, they're counterintuitive to what they're arguing for. So I'll leave it up to everyone else's. I do have quite a bit of data and such, but I won't get into that now. I'll keep it much shorter. But obviously it did pass 4-2 in the Plan Commission, and I'm in favor of the current ordinance as written with the 3 nights, no max.
Right, Bob.
Yeah, just, I guess I'm asking for some insight on why the planning commission arrived at 3 nights. screams weekend to me. Okay, so why was that number chosen versus 4 or 5?
Because there were 4 people who agreed with that, and there were 2 people who disagreed with it.
There was discussion on the fact that,
Oh, we tried for 4.
yeah,
And that was not passed.
the fact that many of the events that come into town, such as the race series that Positively Pewaukee puts on, or the soccer and baseball events that Park and Rec hosts, are for weekends or long weekends. So it allows those families to be able to come in town. The families that are currently staying at the Holiday Inn and eating at Thunder Bay Grill and then leaving town, to now bring them into the village.
My position and the position of the others who opposed this was that having 4, 5, or 6 days would be more likely to be a family-oriented stay than a weekender. And again, the concern being, and I'm of an age, my kids, had their bachelor and bachelorette parties and things. They go rent a place and they have fun for a weekend. That's the concern I have for the residents that live next to these properties, is that they're going to be subjected to that. As Trustee Grabowski said, we haven't had an issue yet. That's great. And we're worried about what's coming up or what's next, or how many more of these properties are going to be subjected to that. Because again, we have a mechanism in place to address it. But as we all know from trying to deal with, compliance issues on properties, it gets sticky. It's very challenging. And so my view is, let's avoid the problem rather than try and react to it afterwards. So that's kind of that rationale. And like I said, when we've tried to get a vote passed on anything like 4, 5, or 6 nights, we couldn't get 4 votes on the Plan Commission. And so that's why it's at 3.
Which is 3 nights, 4 days.
Yes, that's the minimum. So 3 nights.
Just to make sure I
3 nights
understand.
is the minimum stay.
Gotcha.
So they can't just rent it for a night. They have to have 3 nights. But again, you're right. It's basically weekend.
Can we talk about the licensing piece? I know that we don't define what the cost is going to be. I assume we have to establish what that cost is going to be. It states in here that it's actual cost of issuing versus and monitoring. So are we limited to just those things? We are.
You can't use licenses for purposes of generating revenue.
Okay.
Period.
Okay. And then the point that Trustee Grabowski brings up in regard to the tourism board, we don't have one. And I would say that 8.5% right now is actually going to the city of Pewaukee, because those companies have no idea that there's a city and village.
That's probably
Okay.
true.
And it's probably being returned back to us in things that they do sponsor within the village. But
Speculate.
for us to start something like that would be again, with 4 or 5 or 6, economically, might not make sense.
So this issue is not on the agenda tonight, but I will say that it's more complex than, you would need to do some study on this, because it's not quite as simple as I think it was portrayed, so.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead.
So just for the record, we received, the entire board received 4 emails. And I don't believe that Scott or Cassie were copied in them, but I would just like to read into the record that Melissa Shibley, 481 Park Avenue, sent an email, as well as I'm guessing her husband, Mike Shibley. Shibley, okay. And Amanda Wagner at 461 Park Avenue, and just before I left for the meeting, Kimberly Hannon. All 3 of them oppose this ordinance, but if they basically stated, they want it to be as restrictive as possible. If you need copies of the emails, I can either forward them, or I can give you the ones that I printed off. Okay. One of them, in fact, made note that the city of Pewaukee, as well as Delafield, already have an ordinance, and question if the Plan Commission was aware of that, and if they reviewed their ordinance, because there are a few differences. One of them being that the minimum stay is 6 nights, and, you know, Craig brought up that that point was argued over and over again. The other one that their point is that the one on-site, off-street parking space provided for every 4 occupants. Our ordinance has 3 off-street parking spaces. I'd like to know how you arrived at that number of 3.
I don't remember how that one particular piece got it, but to answer your broader question, we actually did use the Delafield ordinance to help us build out a lot of those provisions. That it was great because we were reading it going, yeah, we should add that, we should add that. You know, so it was very helpful in terms of those conditions for the licensing.
And there was another community too, and I can't think of it, was up north, I believe.
Sheboygan Falls is the community that I asked that we look at to define the terms of having an owner or property manager accessible during rentals.
And there was another small community that has actually said in there that the owner has to live in the building or within a certain
Yeah, I
distance
don't
of the
recall which
property.
community that was.
Question. So on one side of Cutmeyer, six nights is required. On the other side of Cutmeyer, we're saying 3 nights is required. That's essentially what we're legislating right now,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
At what point, Mark, would you consider that to be a major change, going from 3 to an additional nights?
I would suggest to be more productive if you decide what it is that you want to do, and I'll let you know at that point what I think needs to go back to the Plan Commission. But given that this issue has been thoroughly debated at the commission and now is being debated at this village board, I think that I'm not sure it'd be very productive to send it back to the Plan Commission solely for that reason.
Well, you know, as my understanding is, the village board is the ruling body having authority over making changes and recommendations to changes for ordinances. And our say is final say. So,
Yes, that's true.
all right, thank you. The other thing that I found very interesting in this ordinance was relative to, and I got to go back up to find the section number 6, item number sub E, and then all the way down to 9. All refuse containers will be screened from public view. 2 weeks ago, we talked about that, and it was shot down. So what makes this ordinance any different than the change that I was looking for in the infill residential development?
These are operating as businesses,
These are within a residential neighborhood.
but they're operating as a business.
They may not be separated, as very separated housing. I don't agree with, if this isn't here, then it should also have been in the other one, and I will leave it at that.
I would also,
I think it's a lot of inconsistency.
President Knutson.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'd also like to point out, I know we received those emails. We did receive emails prior in favor of the less restrictive. I've also spoken to a couple of the short-term rental owners personally, but beyond that, I'd like to at least state for the record that those emails we received are, I believe the closest is 8 houses from a current short-term rental, and then they get farther from there. And we have 0 input from anyone that's been directly adjacent to a short-term rental currently. I am probably the closest to living to a short-term rental. I'm across the street from one, and I have had 0 reasons to complain. I personally have met some wonderful people. They've ranged from military that are in town to people that are renting while their house is being finished or while they're shopping for houses. So I can speak firsthand on that one, but if we're going off of what has been submitted, we have no input negative from anyone that is directly adjacent to a property that has been operating for over 2 years. Just to point that out. So everything we're doing is speculating of bachelor parties going forward, but apparently bachelor parties are only popular in Pewaukee from this point on, not for the past handful of years that they've been operating.
Anyone else would like to comment before I comment?
Yeah, I will.
Yes, go ahead.
In the interest of time and not having to repeat, I'm on board with just about everything that Craig did say. I'd also like to point out that there is a current one being operated on Park Avenue, and a lot of those people that have emailed from Park Avenue live in very close proximity, just a couple houses away from the current VRBO. So I do agree with the most restrictive route to go. The surrounding communities have gone that way. The town of Delafield, that's also on the lake, just recently voted on going fairly restrictive. So this is leaving just the small portion of the lake that the village is in with ordinances that don't match the rest of the lake property. And let's be honest, a lot of these VRBO short-term rentals are going to be more prevalent on the lake than they're probably going to be elsewhere. So that's the surrounding communities are going this route. To me, this is an indication that this is really what people that live in this area want to see. Really, the only emails or communication that we've gotten in support of this are people that currently own these properties. So of course, they're going to be in support of this, as it's kind of quote their business. And they're generating revenue off of it. So of course, they're going to be in support of a least restrictive model. These are residential areas. I think they should stay residential and shouldn't be turned into more of a business format. I think there's places, I mean, if, for example, it would be great if we could have some lodging here. I don't disagree with that. But I think that's better in a commercially zoned area. If Seatman wanted to turn the upstairs of his buildings into a boutique hotel, that sounds great, and I would be in 100% support of some sort of lodging that way. I really don't want to see it within residential areas. I don't think that people purchase their homes with the thought that they were going to be having this type of activity next to them. I do have concerns of future ownership of these properties. Yes, there hasn't been problems as of yet, but we are seeing trends of, as Craig mentioned, corporations coming in and buying houses. There can be other businesses that are going to come in that aren't necessarily from this area that can own these properties and then rent them out and then find a manager that can, quote, manage this property within the 5 miles, but that's really, that's not local ownership at this point, and not local representation. I know at some point in one of the planning commission meetings, there was something brought up about traveling nurses and such using these properties. I agree that that is a great use of those properties, but typically a traveling nurse or someone that's in a traveling occupation like that is going to meet that 6-day minimum. They're not typically just coming in for a short term. They're normally on assignment for quite a while, so that would still be something that would be that they could use these for, considering that we have a 7-day minimum. Sorry, I'm trying to read my notes and talk at the same time, and apparently it's not working really well. So yeah, I guess like I said, I'm on board with Craig's thought process on this. I think our town is a residential town. We're not a tourist town like a Door County or a Lake Geneva or a Minocqua or something like that. I think it's great that what we have here is a residential lake community, and I guess I'd like to see it stay more as a residential lake community where the people here are the people that live here, and it doesn't turn into just a revolving door of people.
Chris, do you have anything?
Sure. I won't cover the ground that has already been so well trod. I do think it's worth noting that if we find that certain properties become problematic, even though they're not today, the major platforms, Vrbo and Airbnb, that are already being used to book already prohibit disruptive gatherings. I'd be happy to share the accessible web forms that are available specifically to neighbors who have concerns over the types of events going on. That would be anything related to noise or even numbers of occupants. So that's certainly worth mentioning. But above and beyond that, it is clear that we are not going to make anybody happy with our next steps. And that's what a compromise really looks like. The plan before us, and I do want to recognize and thank the Plan Commission for working so hard on it, increases the burden on owners. It requires licensing. It requires a 3-night, 4-day threshold that's going to make it far less likely that problematic stays are occurring. And it does require that owners or property managers are accessible during those stays. Those are positives. I would love if we had such clarity on this issue from the voices of our residents that we knew exactly what direction to go in. We don't. We've heard from about equal numbers, people that are pro, who are residents of our community, and yes, also business owners and people that are against. I understand both perspectives. I think we are going to just be in a position where we're going to make the best choice before us, and everyone's going to have to come to the table and understand that we all have to give something on it.
Any other comments?
One last comment, if I could.
Sure, go ahead.
Again, I'm going to go back to my concern on Cutmeyer. We're going to have a northwest number on one house that requires 6 nights, and the one, quite obviously, could be right next door to it, don't know, is going to be 3 nights because it's a village. We have strived to be very consistent with the city in a lot of the restrictive or in the ordinances that have been put together, or what we have done when it comes to licensing, things like that. I think it doesn't make sense to me that we're being completely different from the city in the approach on essentially the same road. Okay? Now, part of me is saying somebody spends the money on the house, government shouldn't be telling them what to do. Okay? I have a problem with that, and I understand that. In the same respect, if I'm spending money on the house and I'm living next door to this, I want neighbors that I get to know. Okay, and you can't blame people for wanting that also, for wanting that community. However, so I look at whatever we would do as far as increasing the nights required is not putting a restriction or hurting the business owners. They're still going to be able to rent their houses out. It's a question of how much more than 3 that we're doing. So again, I understand where the business owners are coming from, but in the same respect, I think the property owners next door have some rights too, especially when it is a residential area.
Can I just ask, would we maintain that consistency then if there were changes moving forward by the city? And how does it then strike you that we've been inconsistent for years already?
We've never had any ordinances in the village.
We've had an ordinance
Yeah.
saying that we were against it,
Yeah.
as opposed to them allowing it for 6 days.
We've never made an attempt to restrict it during my tenure on the board.
Well, their ordinance is new. Their ordinance is newer too.
Yeah, yeah.
So this, within, I don't know how long ago, do you know, Craig, how long ago they did their ordinance?
The city just passed theirs within the last month.
Yeah, that's what I thought, so it's new
Okay,
too.
that covers the past then. So then moving forward, if they made a move to make it less restrictive, that would be our automatic move as well.
Well, and again, I would have no issues with that.
I'm just asking for clarification.
Go ahead.
One more comment is that, I have rented short-term, transient housing, if you will, on our, for certain things for as little as 2 days. Even in fact, in Europe, a couple of them for 1 night. But again, as Bob said, it's their ownership of property. They should be entitled to what they do. I get that we want to protect our community, is what I'm also saying. I'm torn on this because of my own personal experience and because of the feedback that we've gotten from both positive and negative from our residents.
Yes, Jim.
Well, I'm trying to get back on the train of thought that I was on. So, I mean, just to point out that, I mean, historically, you know, if you want to talk about length of stay and it determining the quality of tenant, you know, Chief Hire here can speak of the amount of significant crimes that we have had out of long-term renters within the communities. There's no correlation between the number of nights somebody's in town and what kind of person they are. So that right there is I feel a moot point. You know, being on Park Avenue, I feel like the people that have wrote emails from Park Avenue, hopefully they were here when, I don't know, when the old meth bust went down at 461 or not 460, across the street from 347. So that was a long-term renter. That made national news. That was awesome for Pewaukee. Heck, I think the gentleman that just robbed one of our local establishments was a long-term renter here. So there's zero correlation between if they're here for 3 nights or 6 nights of what they're going to be doing while they're in town. The other part of it is, as the chief could speak to as well, removing a short-term renter who is a nuisance is a one-night issue. It's the same as getting kicked out of a hotel. If they are too loud, if they are too, breaking whatever law, the police can come in and they are gone that evening. A long-term renter has to go through the eviction process, and they're there for quite some time while they're still a nuisance to our community. So this whole, I understand where everyone's coming from about protecting the community, but we say that out of one side of our mouth, and out of the other side, we sit there and say we care about the businesses, we care about the thriving downtown, we care about this jewel that we have and showing it off the lake, and then we try to pass an ordinance to restrict, to protect our community. Well, what are we protecting it from? Because there's no historical data that shows that there is an issue with this. And if somebody wants to say we're worried about our property values and all that, there's actually been studies that show that property values increase with transient rentals. There's actual documentation against what we've been saying or what emails we've been fielding. So it's like, I get it. I get where people have their own personal opinion. I get where the whole not in my backyard comes from. 100% understand that. But with the ordinance that we have drafted up, with the permitting or with the annual licensing, the local representation, be it owner or management company, and the phenomenal police department that we have to be able to provide quick response to any potential nuisance, I don't feel this is what everyone is building it up. Everyone that's opposing it is building it up in their head to be. I'll just leave that. Beyond that, a couple of the current short-term rental owners have their names on parks here. I don't. No, not the board does.
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, not yet. So I would say if somebody's worried about being a poor representation for the community, it's not those people. They're not looking to do damage to the community when they have their family names staked to Pewaukee. Beyond that, if we are looking at doing anything restrictive, I asked for a grace period because many of these businesses that are operating these have already booked for a good portion of this year. So to enact something that would be more restrictive now, I would ask for a grace period before implementation so that they have a chance to clear their books. But I'm opposed to that. I am in favor of what has been presented to us that was already passed from the Plan Commission.
Anyone else? Okay, to the point of Delafield and the city passing this a little more restrictive. The one thing they've got is they have a lot of hotels in their community, which we do not. So they are really not getting anything out of it by having short-term rentals. The other thing is, as it was stated before, sorry, I got some problem going on here with this phone. We've got one person that I know of that I've had a couple meetings with, and she says that the home that she is renting out right now actually has residents that are living in it year-round upstairs that are renting 2 parts of it. And the original owner lived down below, And it's been doing that for as long as, I guess, he was living there. So it was on a rental basis. Now what she's doing is they are renting the downstairs. She said she's gotten a lot of positive feedback from the people that have rented, saying how nice this community is, and they couldn't wait to get back to it the next time they come through town. Friendly people, good food, et cetera, et cetera. So we got a lot of positive out of it. I don't understand, the complaints that they first came in with was, we want to be able to enjoy the summer. We want to be able to be outside. Well, that point was covered that if we even did the restrictive, they're going to rent it the 181 days, which is going to be summer. So even if they rent it for 6 days, that doesn't necessarily mean the person has to stay there for 6 days. They could come in for 3 days and then leave, but they couldn't rent it the next 3 days, but then they could rent it again. So, it's one of those things where, yeah, they get the 6-day rental but only have 3 people are renting it for 3 days. And it's not taking away from the complaints of, I want to be able to enjoy my summer. Was one of the main issues. And I think that went away, and then it was, well, they're still going to have big parties and all of that, and it's going to be noisy and obnoxious and everything. And I'm sure that everybody on the lake is so quiet, and everybody that lives in the community, when they have parties outside, they're very quiet. They don't make any noise. There's no screaming or yelling. I would find that hard to believe. Anybody tell me that they have big parties and everybody behaves themselves, and, well, maybe you invite the neighbors over so you don't have to deal with it. The other thing is, for years growing up, I lived on the lake, and the house next door to my parents' home had a very big boathouse that upstairs was a full apartment, and it was very, very nice. And every summer that was rented out to a lot of young students, people that loved to party. And I would say that, yeah, some nights it got a little unnerving, but you know what? It's the summer, everybody enjoys it, everybody enjoys themselves. It's when it does get to be 3 a.m, yeah, I can understand people complaining, but I grew up there, and my parents never had a bad thing to say about it. They had the neighbors come over for get-togethers occasionally, so it was something that everybody knew. You lived on the lake, this is what's going to happen. And they rented it, The 3 days, I think it was because there are a lot of people that go away for the weekend. And yeah, some of them might be going for bachelor parties or bachelorette parties. But I think if you go to Nashville, you're going to find that a lot bigger than around here. And be honest with you, I haven't really seen any bachelor or bachelorette parties being held in the neighborhoods. Most of them are going to bars and enjoying themselves there. Or they go down to Milwaukee to the bars or whatever. I just don't see why we are concerned about something that we will have total control over now, because we are going to get it licensed. It's going to be a little put together, but we will get the licensing together. We will collect money for it, as Jim had stated. Will it be a lot? Maybe, maybe not. But it will be something at least, and then we will have, like I said, total control over this. Right now, we don't. And I just don't understand why somebody, as it was pointed out, you could rent long-term to somebody and have a real jerk there. Bob, I don't know if you know the neighbor next to you, he's renting. Have you met him?
Yes, okay, let's
But,
focus
okay,
this
all
on
right, I'm
the
sorry.
ordinance rather than individual anecdotes, please.
Okay. But anyway, I was very pro, or actually I was against it to begin with. I was thinking 6 days, the 181, and then I started to realize that this is gonna be done in the summer. There's gonna be complaints no matter what happens. I don't believe there will be, but I know certain people just to complain are gonna complain. I hate to say that, but I think that will happen. But it's very strange that it's been going on for all these years without any issues. And I think that's what changed my vote, was that, plus what Trustee Rhodey said about, you bought a home, you should have the right to do with it what you want, to a degree. I'm not worried about Kottmeyer here and Kottmeyer there. I mean, if we want to do everything that the city does, then let's get the M word out, which means merger. I mean, we don't have to be exactly doing everything the city or the Delafields or the Heartlands are doing. This is our own community. And I actually thought for the years I've been on here, we've been trying to build this community into a destination for people to come and visit and see and spend time here and enjoy themselves here and be able to go back and say, hey, you guys got to go to Pewaukee. They really know how to have a good time, which I have heard people say during the fireworks, during the street dance. People from other communities say, you guys really have a great party. You got the lake here. My God, is this a lot of fun. But we have no place for them to stay. We aren't getting anything out of it. The city is benefiting. Delafield is benefiting. And Heartland's putting in a place. I think they're putting in a motel or a hotel. So they're going to benefit from us. But we won't. And if we're not going to if we're saying this is just a community that's not going to be a destination community, then why are we worried about transient boats? Why are we worried about a fishing pier? Why are we worried about anything that brings more people into this community? I myself want this to be a place, a destination for everybody to come to and really enjoy this area. And I want the people of this village to enjoy themselves too. So I think we're on the right path. I think this is just one more tool in our pocket that we can control to make that happen. And I'm not going to go back because I'm starting to repeat myself. So I am stuck with the 3 days. If you want to go for it, I guess I could go the one extra day. It still could make somebody say, well, they're coming in on Thursday, they're going to leave Sunday. They'll have to pay for the extra day. That's just the way it's going to be. But I think the 3 days is not going to be an issue. Hasn't been now, and I don't think it will be in the future. Anybody else like to make a comment? Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2023-02, possible, let's see. Okay, amend the village code of Village of Pewaukee regarding the regulation of transient commercial lodging uses as proposed.
Do I have a second?
Second, Krasovich.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this topic? Yes, Scott.
Point of technical correction on page 10 of the packet. There's a citation to Administrative Code ATCP. It references Code Section 74. It should state Code Section 72.
Okay.
It's just referencing the proper Administrative Code section. It's not changing anything that's been discussed.
Motion still stands.
Okay. All right, let's do a roll call vote. When you're ready, Cassie.
All right. Trustee Rhodey.
No.
Trustee Bell.
No.
Trustee Krasovich.
Yes.
Trustee Roberts.
No.
Trustee Grabowski.
Yes.
Trustee Hill.
Yes.
President Knutson.
Yes. Can you tell me?
4-3.
4-3?
4-3, yes.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Ordinance number, possible action on ordinance 2023-03, ordinance to amend Chapter 86, Article 3, Section 86111 of the Code of Ordinances regarding speed limits decreased West Wisconsin Avenue along Lakefront Park. Who wants to take this? Should I go to Ed?
So this was brought before the Public Works and Safety Committee at our last meeting. It was unanimously recommended that we change the year-round speed on Wisconsin Avenue at the lakefront from 25, currently 25 in the winter, 15 in summer, to 15 miles an hour year-round.
Any questions or comments, Bob?
Yeah, I guess I just had a question in regard to the committee and what brought this about?
Well, there was a couple of different things, and I'll let Trustee Grabowski will chime in as well. But we feel that even in the winter months that we still have the same issues as to why we dropped it to 15 miles an hour for the summer months with people crossing the street. We don't have the speed humps in the wintertime. They're removed for snow removal. It'll save wear and tear on the signs that we won't be taking them down and putting them up twice a year, save our DPW labor as well. But primarily it's still, a matter of, if we feel 15 miles an hour is the right speed for summer months when we have the majority of most traffic and everything else, it should be in the wintertime as well, because we still have a lot of traffic and a lot of pedestrians that are still crossing streets.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much know that. I brought it to the committee because we are Public Works and Safety. It's a joint committee on that one. And, in the wintertime, we're obviously dealing with less daylight hours, still have blind parking, diagonal parking. We have more parking in the wintertime even. So there's more blind crossings and such, and it felt unnecessary to raise the speed limit to encourage people to go faster through the winter times and then drop it in the summer. So just to keep it consistent throughout, similar to when the park doesn't have enough lifeguards to staff it completely, just make it consistent so people know what it is at all times.
I can tell you that I talked to one of the business owners, and they were ecstatic when they heard that the Public Works and Safety passed the 15-mile-an-hour speed limit, because they said when it does change to 15 until the bumps came in, it took a while for people to get used to it. They just came flying through, and also when winter comes, it seems like people are going a lot faster than 25 because they don't feel there's anybody out there, so they just really speed. And I've seen that happen too while I was there. So
really brought
I am really in agreement with this. I'm glad that you guys brought it forward and got it passed. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. It brought my attention when some guy was tailgating someone and I was walking down with the dog and he yelled out his window, "It's not 15 anymore," and honked at him as they're doing like 25 down the street. So he was looking at going faster than 25, and I was like, okay, we need to do something about this.
Is there any other comments?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2023-03 to amend Chapter 86, Article 3, Section 86.111 of the Code of Ordinances regarding speed limits decreased on West Wisconsin Avenue along Lakefront Park.
I'll second. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is hereby carried. Item 6, we have none. Item 7, old business, we have none. Item 8, new business. Discussion and possible action on right-of-way lease agreement for parking, public parking spaces with Beach Bum Bakery, 161 West Wisconsin Avenue, Unit 1G. Scott, you want to kind of summarize
Just to highlight, again, this was reviewed at Public Works and Safety. A request came in from Sarah Stevens of Beach Bum Bakery with the request to lease the two 15-minute parking spaces that are presently in front of Beach Bum Bakery. Those are parking spaces currently open for anyone. The interest expressed was to look at renting those spaces on a seasonal basis, similar to the businesses in the downtown area that currently rent parking spaces for street dining or street use. The committee reviewed it and found merit in moving this forward to the village board for consideration, looking at the same terms and conditions that would be applicable to the businesses renting for street dining. At a staff level, we did have some discussion because I think there might have been some, I don't know if that was specific discussion as an enforcement means, but some offhand possible or discussion with regard to enforcement and towing being one means of enforcement. And you have in the staff report a strong discouragement of that because there would be a lot of time and effort involved from a police department perspective to do the investigation before a call is made to tow in a vehicle. It's not as simple as calling a tow truck and saying, hey, get over here, tow this vehicle. There's investigative work that needs to be done to try and locate the owner of the vehicle before you just go ahead and tow the vehicle. So with that,
No, I guess I could field it to chief with that, but is that standard practice?
We try to find somebody before we tow it.
I mean, because I get that this is for public property or public right of way where that's the process, but let's say if it was private property on your parking behind an apartment complex that says tow away zone, if they call the police on that, they would have the right to tow it there, correct? Because that's private property?
They can tow it. For private property, they can tow it.
Right,
Police.
so
they don't need us at all.
So what I'm getting at is because technically we're entering into a lease in this situation, so wouldn't they be the one that's controlling that? So it's quasi-private property at that point because they're the lease holder of those properties, so it's no longer village enforcement. It would be on them to enforce it because no different than if you're leasing, they're leasing their building. If somebody entered it, they could have them removed because they're the leaseholders of it.
Yeah, they could contract with a private tow company.
Correct.
It would be completely out of our hands.
Correct. So we
If
could.
a car parks there and it's a tow-away zone.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works with the city street, village street.
But like I said, because it's technically, or is that a Mark Blum question? I mean, because it's a leased property, so then it would be.
It's a leased property, so you make the decision on what rights you are leasing to them. And do you want to have the ability to weaponize the lease rights that they have in terms of creating towing in that situation? Or do you just want a citation to be issued because you're violating the village ordinance? I guess that's a policy decision for you all to make, but I can already hear the complaints that you're going to get if somebody gets towed, that they went into the chocolate factory and they were, first of all, how do you know that it was in fact being used, not for the appropriate uses, and then make a decision that in fact is appropriate to tow? I could just see a lot of ways that this is going to go wrong, but
again,
whatever.
Then wouldn't those complaints or grievances be
No,
filed?
because it's a village parking space. Who gave the authority for them to do it? It's this village board. So if you think that you're not going to get complaints from those that are involved here, I think
guess
that's.
that we're not going to field complaints, but the legality side of it, if it's leased out, it's no longer our
I would
responsibility.
not encourage you to do that. It's public parking spaces that you're leasing out. This is dramatically different from the situation where you have dining, where you can't use it for anything else because they're going to put out their chairs and their tables, etc. This is different because you now are saying that only one class of potential users of that area downtown are going to be restricted. And, well, that's a policy decision for you to make, but I think you've got some enforcement issues if you decide to do it on the public parking spaces. What were at least and are being leased. I assume that off hours those cannot be used then at all then, or is that what you're saying? Or can you use them for other purposes when the bakery is closed? Is that an exclusive right at any time or any date, regardless of whether they're open or not? I mean, those are the kinds of things I guess you'd have to work through there. It seems to me it creates a can of worms. My opinion. That and $5 will get you your latte.
Any other questions?
I have a question just about
Yeah.
the terms here, the insurance terms, the permit fees, the dates, et cetera. These are all consistent with what's in place for the other restaurants that are utilizing the parking spots.
Scott, you and I discussed this at our meeting that we always have. With the new, that we've okayed the possible use in front of the restaurant, Beach Bun, Bistro.
Plan Commission has approved a conditional use grant for street dining for Beach House Bistro.
Right.
It's not been brought forward to the village board yet for the right-of-way permit because we're still waiting to finalize all the terms of the conditional use grant with the fencing and the tables and chairs. That's not been done yet, so that's why that's not been brought forward to the village board.
My question to you would be, if I remember correctly, that would only leave 4 spots from the bistro to the bakery. There would be 4 open spots. Is that not correct?
4 spots, 2 of those of which are the 15-minute parking spots in question with the board this evening.
I guess I'm gonna throw this out to the board. This again would have probably go back to safety, public works and safety, but making those 4 all 15-minute parking, but not limiting it to the bakery so that there would be no issue with somebody coming in maybe to the bakery or to the chocolate factory or someplace else for 15 minutes to pick up something, get in their car and leave. And we could possibly make it from 7 in the morning till 10 at night. Yes, Ed, go ahead, I'm sorry. Maybe that was discussed, I don't know.
Oh, it wasn't, Jeff, but, the applicant specifically commented at Public Works and Safety as well as this evening that
Right.
it's currently 15-minute parking. People don't pay attention to that. They park, they go to any of the places on downtown and lake, they might come back 15 minutes, they might come back an hour and a half. So that is why the applicant wants these as reserved parking, 15-minute reserved parking for Beach Bum Bakery, not 15-minute general village Milwaukee, because we lack enforcement. And we don't have somebody walking a beat. We don't have the meter maid that's going through and monitoring that somebody's there for 20 minutes and writing them a citation or whatever. So this is what the applicant has requested. This is what was approved by the Public Works and Safety, is to allow them to designate those 2 spots, 15-minute parking, Beach Bum Bakery only. Whether or not we can have, the wording can be on that the owner may be responsible for towing at their own expense. I don't know. That's wording that we are leaving up to staff to work out with Beach Bum Bakery as to how the signs are being worded, and it's up to Beach Bum Bakery to provide the signs.
That was a question I had. Thank you.
Correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was discussed and designed to be no enforcement or financial investment from the village, because we don't pay to do the patio. We don't give any money towards the patios that go out there, so we shouldn't give any money towards this, be it even if it's simple signage. But beyond that, this would be their lease holding, and then they would be responsible for any enforcement they want to put on it, so that we weren't putting a further burden on our stretch thin police department during the summer.
Okay. That sounds like you guys did your homework, so.
Jeff?
Yes.
And I think to Mark's point, it's a valid one that, and I'm not seeing it in here, at least I'm not catching it, is when we talk about the terms of the lease, I think it would have to reflect the Beach Bum Bakery's hours of operation. If they're closed on a certain day, or if they're closed by a certain time of the day, that those spots would be available for use. So I think we would have to kind of specify that any signage that would go out there would have to specify in terms of the hours that the restricted parking would apply to.
But I suppose, I don't want to speak for the applicant, but I mean, outside of, obviously, they're not going to, if they're closed on Mondays, they're not going to be there to enforce it. But from my understanding of when it was presented to us, they would be leasing these spots, just like if the chocolate factory is not open on Monday, another business isn't going to go in there and use their patio. You know, it's still their spots. So what enforcement happens while Beach Bum is closed is on them. But they're the leaseholder for this time frame. We don't have it in the lease for Chocolate Factory or Artisan or anything else that says this is just your patio during your business hours. After that, they're public. Because we said
People could be using those seats.
they could, but that's on the enforcement of Artisan. If Ted walks up and there's a party going on in his patio, he has the right to kick him out because that's his spot for that time frame. And we structured it so that the lease here was the exact same lease, or not structured it. We suggested that the lease here be the exact same lease as the other patios to keep everything consistent down there, so that there's
Same lease fee and everything.
So outside of their business hours, while they might not be open, if somebody parks there, but they had to come down to the shop or something, that's on them to enforce it. Those are their spots, regardless of what their business hours are.
And I think if you had the signage, you know, and for instance, if they were closed on Monday, but some event is going on a Monday because maybe it's the 4th of July on Monday, and they decided to be open, then their signage would be inappropriate. So I think we just pass it as is, and their spots, and if they're not there to enforce it, then that's the way it goes.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's even going to delve much into enforcement, right? It's about discouragement. When I see a sign that says business parking only, I tend to honor and respect that sign and look for another spot. So I'm in favor. In fact, I'll make a motion.
I got one question before
No,
you do that.
I was just on a roll. I'm sorry.
If you don't
I'll
mind.
stop making motions.
I think
This
Kelly has
is-
a comment also.
Although we technically
Yeah,
can continue to
She's been raising
discuss.
her hand.
Yes, you can, so.
We can
it's up to
discuss
you.
after
Yeah,
the
we
motion.
can.
too.
I just wanted to ask Mark, if, as long as, you know, they are laying it out, that this is something that they are renting, and they are renting it for the whole year, or the whole summer. If they put a fence out when they're not open, would that be legal? Could they
It's
put
all
something
about
there to
what
block?
it's all about what the terms are of the lease that you enter into with.
Okay.
You want to allow them to do that, that would be something you'd want to include in the lease.
Because at least that would eliminate the issues when they leave at night, or, you know, when they're not working on the Mondays or whatever days are closed. If they want to just block it off, then it's up to them to decide, well, we'll allow people to be there or we won't. Yes, Bob?
I don't know why they would want to do that, okay?
Right.
You know, but I think what's being proposed here, and I think the owners will be reasonable as far as, you know, the expectation is that the spots will be used for their customers while they are open. And that is their primary concern, and that's how they would treat it. I don't think there should be any extra powers that we're giving them during closed hours.
Okay. And this is from, just like the normal leases, I missed that in here, from April till October or something like that?
That is correct. And at the same fee per square foot.
Okay. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, Kelly indicated that she wanted to speak.
Oh, Kelly, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of making spots specific. I understand we have the dining for other people. I would rather see, Jeff, I'm kind of more on board with what you said as far as the 4 spots that are there, making them all 15-minute parking for all businesses to use. I mean, people might want to go to Lake and Pine for 15 minutes, pop in there. They might, there's other places that people can go and pop in for 15 minutes that I'm not a big fan of restricting a usable parking spot to a specific business. I'd rather see that it can be used by all businesses down there, particularly since some spots have been taken up with dining. So some of the retail businesses, there's not as much spots available to them now in the front because of that. And I like that setup, don't get me wrong on that. But I liked your idea that you mentioned of making all those spots 15 minutes for anybody to use. Enforcement's going to be an issue no matter what, no matter which way we look at it, whether it's Beach Bum enforcing it or whether it's the police enforcing it or the businesses down there. Regardless, I think enforcement's going to be, it is a problem, and I think it's going to continue to be a problem.
Anyone else? Jim, did you want to come back?
No, I was saying. Trustee
Oh,
Bell had
okay.
a comment.
Did we have a motion?
I
No,
will
not
make,
yet.
I will make a motion to approve the right-of-way lease agreement for public parking spaces with Beach Bum Bakery at 161 West Wisconsin Avenue, Unit 1G.
Second, Grabowski.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Let's do another roll call, just,
Just for fun?
yep, just for fun.
Trustee Rhodey?
Yes.
Trustee Belt?
No.
Trustee Krasovich?
Yes.
Trustee Roberts?
Yes.
Trustee Grabowski?
Yes.
Trustee Hill?
Yes.
President Knutson?
Yes. Motion is hereby carried. Item B, discussion and possible action on agreement with Flock Group, Inc. for hardware and software license plate camera system. Scott, you have a,
Yep. This was, first thing, my math was wrong. There's 5 cameras, not 6, so the installation charge of the 2100 I referenced should be $1,750. My apologies for that. But circling back, this was a subject that was discussed by the village board during the budget session for the use of ARPA funds for the lease of the 5 cameras. We've come to terms on the language of an agreement with them. The one thing that wasn't disclosed when the police department was discussing the lease and all that was the $350 per camera installation charge. So that's something that was sprung upon the department is we're getting into the nuts and bolts of the lease agreement, which is before the village board this evening. There would be funding available for that expense to come from the department operational budget at this point, given where we're at with staffing at this point in the year. So $1,750 for installation would be available through the operational budget. So what's before the board this evening is to consider the agreement with Flock for the 5 cameras. Time frame for the 2-year lease agreement. This is a minimum 2-year agreement. 2-year lease agreement would start with the approval of the agreement.
So what did you say, that, you know, the math was wrong on the 350 at 5 cameras instead of 6?
Yeah,
So the annual cost is or the first year cost is reducing by 350 instead of being 17.1, it's going to be 16
and change, yeah.
16,750 or 850. Okay.
how come we're dropping a camera?
No, 5 was always the discussion. My brain, when I was calculating the installation charge, was telling me that we had 6 cameras as part of the
okay.
agreement, so.
Any
Not
other,
enough coffee that morning.
any other comments or questions?
I'll just make one quick comment. I think it's important that we're giving our police department the best possible equipment to keep the community safe. And this is part of that equipment, so completely, in favor of this.
When would they be installed? To be able to, there's certain problems possibly in Capitol Drive. Around 9 weeks, 6 to 9 weeks. Okay.
Did we push back on the 2,100 fee that they didn't disclose to us, and so it wasn't budgeted for?
The fee's always been there. We did not know anything about it. I talked to Detective Drumming, who spearheaded this whole thing, was the investigator. He never said anything about it. I tried to come up with, well, can we get some other things like a 3-month trial period, which would offset the cost of this, and they are very firm they would not budget at all. But we did push back. But we're also adamant that we were never told this at that time.
Yeah, I've gotten told that from vendors before too, and push back as much as you can.
And Mark, you're okay with the contract?
Yeah, we reviewed it and provided some feedback, and those issues were addressed. So.
Okay.
Trustee Hill motions to approve the expenditure for the Flock Group cameras hardware system and software license as noted in the packet with the adjustment on cost for having one too many cameras included in the annual.
Second, Rhodey.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is hereby carried. Tonight we have an update on the Finance Committee. Kelly, do you want us?
Yeah, that's fine. It'll be brief update. Just want to let Craig and I had met a couple of times, went through what we were looking for. Obviously, this is new, so there's going to be a little bit of trial and error. So we did meet with Scott and Kayla also, and I think we came up with a good plan. So we will be reporting quarterly to the board. Kayla will be president. She'll give us the information ahead of time. I think one request that Kayla would like is that if there are questions, that they are given to her ahead of time, just so she's not blindsided while at the meeting, and that if it requires additional research or things of that nature, she can do that. Ahead of time. So we're going to go through, fund balances, budget to actual, some variance analysis from actual to budget that seem to be askew, a little bit of a narrative, so we know what those are. And Craig and I will be in contact with them more on a monthly basis, just to keep in tune with it. So I do want to thank Craig for his time and effort on meeting and going through all this stuff and kind of establishing a plan. And Scott and Kayla too for being open to what we're looking at. And I think it'll come together. So, and we're looking at, as far as a quarterly presentation, it would be like, so at our next meeting in April, would be that second meeting following the end of the quarter is where we'd be looking to present those financials.
Okay. Craig,
Anything else, Craig?
Well, I'll just add, first of all, we backed off from the idea of having a formal committee so we don't have
Yes.
another night meeting, and that was to everyone's pleasure.
Yes.
Including ours.
Yes.
And also, we were just thinking too that by having it on the agenda quarterly, it goes to one of the elements within our strategic plan of having our financial information a little more transparent in terms of to the public, because it'll be part of the packet that'll be out there for the public to view as well. So and the video, yes, always the video. So we thought we kind of killed another bird with the same stone kind of approach by doing that. But it will give us the opportunity, especially with fund balances, because since that's how we operate everything is through funds, is when a special request comes up, I mean, what's the first question we ask is, well, how are we paying for that, and do we have the money? And at least on a quarterly basis, we will know where we stand on those things. So it's not a lot of reports, but it's probably enough for us to at least have a lot more information now than what we've ever had.
You expect the dashboard that we talked about as part of strategic planning, that would come from the two of you and Kayla?
I would like to get some sort of dashboard developed as we get into this a little more, and I see the reporting that we have and how maybe getting feedback from you guys too on how presentation information you're looking for. I would like to have a goal of having a dashboard by end of, I originally said June, maybe September now. Just, I think would be helpful if we can come to something, some format that we think is usable. And that's gonna be the hardest part, is figuring out what that usable format is. Because it's a lot of information when you're talking about a municipal budget, is it? You know, in financials, it's a lot of moving pieces and things, and so how to structure that. I would,
That's great. If I can just lob in.
Yeah.
I just want to appreciate you guys for taking this on. I know it's an incredibly busy time of year for you, especially Kelly. And this is kind of, sorry.
Do you see the bags under my eyes?
Tonight. So thank you. I think it's going to be something that we're all really going to appreciate moving forward.
And there will be a bit of a learning curve because, most of us have private business background, and business accounting and government accounting are not the same.
Two different
thing.
plans.
they're very, very different. I can attest to that.
So yes, we have to turn it into English for the rest of us, so.
That'll be lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, item D, I'm going to defer to the next meeting. Something that I learned this evening that I did not know came up, and I want to go into it a little bit further. So item E is discussion and direction on proposed building code amendment. I think this was brought forward by Trustee Hill,
So as I was going through some building codes and verification of various things, came across our ordinance, which is for demolition permits. One thing that I noted in the ordinance itself is that even though it is required that by the EPA and the DNR that contractors fill out the proper reports and submit the proper reports to the EPA and the DNR for abatement, for removal of hazardous waste, which may also include fluorescent light bulbs, compact fluorescent light bulbs, light bulb ballast, and being as how I'm in the industry, there are DNR and EPA regulations with regards to safe handling of refrigerant. Again, the DNR and EPA require that these things get taken care of, but unless you're dealing with reputable licensed contractors who have the right certifications and licensures, and their field technicians are also certified and licensed, it ain't gonna happen. And every day I drive down the street, and especially when I get into some areas of southeastern Wisconsin, I all of a sudden see Joe's Heating and Air Conditioning, Bob's take care of my house and make it cold, Ed's fix it. There's a lot of companies out there that don't have the proper licensure, insurance, and certification and requirements to meet the EPA. I just felt it necessary that this wording get adjusted to make sure that when somebody pulls out a demolition permit, that they are aware that we want the documentation submitted to building inspection so that they have a record of it.
any comments, questions? Yes,
I don't have any issue with that, and even though it is referencing state rules, it's not inconsistent with what we do on the Plan Commission. It is very common that in various zoning ordinances, we are referencing things related to the state. I think we had that part of it was with the animal ordinance as well. So it's not an unusual thing, but I think to Ed's point is that we're making it very clear within our ordinances that we do want to make sure that all of the appropriate state statutes apply within our borders as well. Nothing else, just to communicate it.
No, sorry, Bob. But I agree with Ed, as someone who's pulled a demolition permit recently and hired reputable contractors to do the work, there are a lot of hurdles that come along with it. And when there's hurdles, there's a lot of people that try to go around those hurdles. And it's very easy to do so if you're working within your own capabilities or your buddy's capabilities. So yeah, I am in agreement with this because to do it right is not easy, but there's a reason. So I'm in favor of it.
someone like to make a motion?
I'll
Well, yeah, if I could just make one comment,
Yeah,
and I guess
go
I'll
right
be on the other side. It's already been noted in here from our attorney that we've got things that are in place on the state and federal level, and that any type of regulatory authority we're trying to do is going to be limited enforcement action, and make it very difficult. So what we're really doing is we're putting a burden on people that are doing business within the village, and we're putting burden on our building services people. It just seems like another layer of government that we're putting on top of something that should be enforced right now, and I just don't think it's wise.
I don't understand, I mean, the comment with regards to putting an additional burden on people that are already doing business in our community. Because if they are doing the business in our community, then they should be licensed professionals, carrying the right certifications and everything else, so it's no additional burden on them to do it. It's to try to stop those that do not do it correctly. And, again, the burden falls on somebody, but if we don't make it clear that these are the expectations and the responsibilities, I just feel this is something needed. So.
This is, really a restatement of what's already required. Yes? A clarification or restatement of things they ought to already be doing.
Of what they ought to be doing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So perhaps helping them to better understand all of the requirements. Okay.
Is there any further discussion? I like the idea. I think it makes total sense to have that added. So would anybody like to make a motion at this time? Oh, yes?
It's on for direction, so.
Oh, direction, I'm sorry.
We'll put it in ordinance format and bring it back at a meeting.
Okay. Shall we bring it back? Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Item F, discussion and possible action on proposal for engineering services, village bridge deck surface treatment. I'll be honest, when I first saw this, I thought of the bridge over at the park. I thought,
Penny's
what?
Bridge?
So,
Nope, the village owns 4 bridges.
Are we selling any?
But it'd be okay if we did.
Put a toll on it.
So, so tonight I'm looking for approval for some engineering services that slightly exceeded staff ability to approve. So our bridges, by state requirements, get inspected every other year. The last 2 inspection periods, the consultant recommended a polymer overlay on our decks. I think 2 of them are from '93 and 1 of them was constructed in '01. So to extend the useful life of those decks, polymer overlay, what that is generally speaking, you scarify the concrete. Well, first of all, the decks have cracking, some spalling, that sort of stuff going on the concrete. So you scarify the concrete, you put down a liquid, you squeegee a liquid epoxy mix on it, and then generally speaking, you put like a fine aggregate on them. I'm sure you've seen them. They're like bridge decks that have like a gray or a black color to them. That's what you'd be looking at. So I worked with Ayers Associates, who did the inspections, to do the load calculations that are required by the DOT before and after the work, put together materials specifications and job performance specifications, and then put together a bid document so we can get proposals from contractors to perform the work. And that is for a lump sum amount of $15,800. And this work was part of the CIP that was adopted last year.
okay. Any comments, questions?
Want to get clarification. So Scott, is this coming out of the general fund or infrastructure fund, or where's it coming from?
This would be coming out of the Capital Projects Fund. We have approximately, and we're still finalizing everything on East Wisconsin, We're probably looking at about $400,000 of previously borrowed funds that
So
we
it's the
have
borrowed fund
available.
that we've already done. Okay,
Yes, from projects
that's what I
that
wasn't clear on. so.
Came in competitively and under budget.
All right.
Any other discussion? Anybody like to make a motion?
Trustee Hill motions to approve engineering services with Ayers Construction for the Village Bridge Deck Surface Treatment Consultant.
Second, Grabowski.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is hereby carried. Thank you, Dan. Item G, alcohol licenses. Possible action on agent change at Pick and Save. Is there any questions or comments? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve as presented. Yes.
Is this Pick and Save or is this Casa Tequilas?
No, it's neither.
Why? Do they
Oh,
have
it's Pick and
something
Save?
wrong?
It says Pick and Save on the thing.
Oh, I thought it said Mega
The
Mart.
first one's,
Could've.
when I looked up the address, 1405, it was
Mega
Casa
Marts.
Tequilas.
Oh, that's because that's at Strip Mall, and so it's like Pick and Save, and then that Forrester owns the other. Yeah, so it's like they're all 1405, but
Sweet A, Sweet B.
Oh,
So it is Pick and Saves.
it is.
Oh.
Yeah.
Actually, the liquor license or sign that.
Are there any other questions?
Motion to approve.
Second, Rudy.
We have a motion and a second. Comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Possible action on new Class A license regarding 1256 Capitol Drive, number 600.
Defer this.
Yeah, the applicant has asked for this to come off of the agenda tonight. So you guys are okay with that? still?
Oh, okay. So we don't need to discuss that. Okay, then item 9 is citizen comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to share their opinions with the board members on any topic they choose. However, due to Wisconsin open meeting laws, the board is not able to answer questions or respond to your comments. All comments should be directed to the board. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Speakers are asked to please use the podium and state their name and address for the record. Anyone here like to make a comment? Yes, sir.
Hi, Steve Rucci again. One thing to add to the liquor licensing, if you're going to make a list, make it online, make it accessible, make it transparent so people can see, hey, this came in, these are the people, the date they put it in, and make sure it's visible. I think that's something that'd be fair. Just my point. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to make a comment? No? Okay, then. The village will go into closed session. The Village Board of Milwaukee will enter into closed sessions pursuant to Wisconsin Statute Section 1985, 1E for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public property, investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, specifically regarding Riverside Preserve Developments Agreement and pursuant to Wisconsin Statute Section 1885, 1G for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved, specifically regarding 460 Parker Avenue. I will look for a motion to go into closed session, please.
Motion, Rudy.
Second, Hill.
Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Rhodey?
Yes.
Trustee Belt?
Yes.
Trustee Krasovich?
Yes.
Trustee Roberts?
Yes.
Trustee Grabowski?
Also defer to Hill. No, yes.
Trustee Hill?
Yes.
President Knudsen?
Yes, we are going into closed session. You'll have to leave for a few minutes.
That's it.
You taught me well.
Now we jinxed it.
Viewership was down last week.
So these are
Viewership
cameras,
was
these
down
are-
last week.
I expect it'll continue to transition.
If it's more than 10, we never get.
I don't know if there's other ones, but
I think it's just the one.
We people that don't have to be here.
That's true. 3.
Is that still on? Oh, we're back, okay. Is that all, just? Yes. Okay. Item A is possible action on Riverside Preserve Developers Agreement. Do I have a motion?
Trustee Hill motions to approve the Riverside Preserve Developers Agreement as presented in closed session with the changes as discussed, and adding that the letter must be signed by both the developer and the property owner by, and returned to the village by the 14th of April.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is hereby carried. Item B, possible action on proposal related to 460 Park Avenue regarding property maintenance.
I will make a motion to engage, what's the name of the firm again? Facility Services for select cleanup as discussed in closed session. That includes cleanup of the yard, to check the buildings for any hazardous material and only remove those, nothing else, to secure the exterior doors and windows. I believe that's what we had, correct? Anyone? Was there anything else? And that's it.
Second, Grabowski.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just want to quickly comment and thank staff for staying on top of this. I know it's really important to these residents, so I appreciate that effort.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is hereby carried. And before Ed adjourns us, I would just like to say, I think I speak for the board. Ed, it's been a real pleasure. You've been a big asset to the board in many, many ways, and I hope that if we need your assistance, we may be able to call on you once in a while. Not all the time, but just once in a while.
She's like, lose that number.
Just leaving the board, I'm not moving out of the village, so yes.
Are there some open committee positions that we need filled?
Actually, he's already slated for one.
Motion to adjourn?
A man of few words. Second, Krasovich.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are hereby adjourned.
Yes. Ed, thank you very much for your.
Thank you, Ed.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.